This is Superior Sports Talk with Reggie Wilson and Luke Inman, part of Locked On Sports Minnesota, and it starts now.
Back in the lab, Reggie and Luke back at it. Another episode of Superior Sports Talk presented by Locked On Sports Minnesota. What's happening, Reggie?
What's up, man? We're back at it again, and you know what? The Wild had exit interviews yesterday, and I'm still just like, yo, we should still be watching them right now, and they feel the same way.
Later on, we're talking Twins. Pat Bev goes off on Chris Paul. Later, I'm putting Reggie on the hot seat with What Does It Mean? It's all coming up on Superior Sports Talk. But first, if you enjoy Superior Sports Talk, you'll also enjoy our other daily show with former NFL receiver Ron Johnson. Ron offers the unique view of an athlete turned broadcaster and brings you high-profile guests like Braylon Edwards, Adam Thielen, and Robert Smith. Subscribe to Locked On Sports Minnesota YouTube channel or your favorite podcast feeds so you never miss an episode. All right, well, let's talk about those Twins, shall we? Late night, if you stayed up for this one, game didn't even start till 8:40, but Twins win, beat the A's in their first of three, 3-1. Royce Lewis and Gary Sanchez with a couple bomb shots and some lights-out pitching that allowed just one run, starting with Chris Archer, who got you through 4 innings, and then Cano, Jack, Duffy, ring them up, sit them down, didn't allow a run the rest of the game. I know what you're going to say, Reggie. It's just the A's, Luke. Settle down. But, hey, man, I'll take them when I can get them. Hopefully they can take advantage of this soft spot in the schedule like we talked about yesterday. But your quick thoughts and notes from last night's victory.
You know, last night showed some grit. You know, Chris Archer started the game, and he had 22 pitches in that first inning. Got into some trouble, got out of it. You know, he ended up only going 4 innings, only gave up an earned run, but no decision. Still didn't get a decision, man. He doesn't have a win still. It's tough. But I think you saw some things that you like. You know, they knocked in the run to start the game. And then, you know, after they allowed the A's to score and tie it up, you're like, oh, man, I don't know what's going to happen. And then Buck, he's just like, oh, it's all good. I got us.
I got it.
Base knock, knocks in a run. They take the lead. They don't look back. Gary Sanchez, he hit that ball to San Diego. Like,
it's still up there.
I mean,
it hasn't come down.
I mean, look, he hit that ball, and a fan that was at home caught it. Like, it was crazy.
Ma, what's in the meatloaf today? It's a little different.
I mean, it was crazy. And so I think you saw some things that were encouraging. You know, the bullpen. You know, I was watching the game last night, and I was talking to our producer, Andy, at Care 11, and I was just like, man, this Twins team is loaded, man. Like, you look all up and down the lineup. You got Byron Buxton on his base knocked in Royce Lewis. We can get used to something like that, right? You know, that's really cool.
Yeah.
And so, you know, you got Celestino. Miranda was getting in. He played first yesterday. You got Royce Lewis. Like, when you talk about how optimistic that you can be for the Twins moving forward in their future, you're just like, dang, like they got some dudes that can be like some good contributors, like moving forward. They got some good building blocks to be a team that can sustain some success moving forward. And I think that makes you hopeful as a Twins fan that they're just going to continue to be relevant because they have really done a great job with their farm system. Now, what you really want to see is the pitching to continue to get better and move forward and all that. But, like, you're talking about a team that doesn't even have Correa right now, and they're producing at a level that has them winning these games. You know, Buxton's not playing all the time, but, like, they're still doing their thing. Like, they're deep. And I think that's very encouraging if you're a Twins fan.
We said it yesterday. We're just waiting for him to get healthy. I want to see what that fully healthy roster, top to bottom, 1 to 9, finally looks like. Because, again, loads of young talent mixed with some stud vets like Buxton and Correa. Twins moved to 21-15, good enough for first place in the Central, and a 95-win pace as we sit today. You love to see it. I saw a tweet last night. If the Twins send down Royce Lewis, we riot. Talking about the eventual return of Carlos Correa at shortstop.
Yeah.
So what's the plan here, Reggie? I mean, you're talking about the number 1 overall pick. You groom and develop him the last few years. He finally gets brought up and looks every bit the part. How does Rocco Baldelli find a spot for him when Correa does, in fact, return to the lineup? I mean, there's just no way you can send him back down now with the way he's flashed in this small sample size the past week or so, right?
I do not want to be Rocco right now.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I do not. And it's tough, you know what I mean? Like, it's great that he's only in St. Paul if you do send him down. But I think what the issue is when you have a guy playing this well, and, you know, Correa, you signed him, maybe it was a bit of a big swing to get Correa. But maybe you didn't think Royce Lewis was absolutely just ready right now to play on an everyday basis. And so you got Correa to you know, help with that. But they have a really good problem to have. When you got an all-star shortstop and then you got an up-and-coming shortstop, first home run as a pro is, or as an MLBer is a grand slam.
Salami.
And then you got him like playing well in the field and with the bat. Like that's exciting. And I think fans are like, look, just put him at second base, put him at third base, put him at DH or something.
Whatever you got to do.
Put him in the outfield. I don't know. You know, it's just like, I think they have a really good problem to have, but like, obviously Carlos Correa's been there, done that. Like, he kind of trumps Royce Lewis at this point. But I think as a fan, you probably feel good, you know, if this is truly a one and done year for Correa. You're like, oh, okay, we're good. We got Royce.
It just feels like sending him back down would just send kind of a low vibe, terrible message, and a tough pill to swallow for fans after finally getting him up and seeing him flash the way he has. Nash Walker had a tweet with a great stat the other night, noting the Twins' outfield has been absolute nails defensively. They're tied for first in the MLB in defensive runs saved and second in the MLB in outs above average. The Twins have used a pretty vast rotation at right and left field. Last night it was Celestino and Nick Gordon. You see Kepler out there a lot, Garlick and others from time to time. But where am I going with this? I got to find a way to bring up and talk about Byron Buxton whenever I can. The man in the middle, the rock. He's the cornerstone of that unit, undeniably, right? And he's also tied for second in the league with 11 home runs, just one behind Aaron Judge with 12. We talked about how valuable the guy is, and Carlos Correa spoke to the media yesterday about supporting this new Twins game plan to put Buxton on 100 or so game count to maximize his talent and health, saying, quote, I'd rather have him for 120 of a full season than have him for 50 because he's trying to do too much. So, Reggie, I know we mentioned it yesterday, but your final quick thoughts on Correa supporting his teammate and the Twins' new game plan to limit Buxton despite the backlash from numerous fans who want to see Buxton out there on the field every game, every inning, every pitch. They can soak everything they can out of him.
You know, Correa, I'm looking at it right now, is like they probably don't know the game of baseball. You're like, whoa,
Right,
don't do that.
right.
Don't do that to the fans. I think what's tough is like, look, I like cookies, okay? I can eat cookies all the time. Like snickerdoodle, peanut butter, chocolate chip, like, my favorite. I love cookies. Can't necessarily eat them all the time, though, if I want to live long. You know what I mean? Like all the butter and all the sugar and all, like, probably not sustainable for my long-term health. You know what I mean?
The doctor
like,
ain't going to allow that. No.
Yeah, you're probably talking about high cholesterol, me having a heart attack when I'm 40, like all that type of stuff, you know? I think it's a similar thing, a similar anecdote with Byron Buxton. Like, the fans love it. He's such a treat. You know, he's ice cream after dinner. And it's just like, oh no, like, I mean, but we love ice cream. What do you mean? Like, dessert is the best. Sometimes
But
I eat
it's
dessert
not the
before
main
dinner.
dish, though, right?
But it's just like, that's not sustainable though. And what we've seen with these injuries with Buxton is like, he's gonna get them, and they are gonna allow him to not play in games and not be durable over a full 162. Well, if you manage that risk and you're like, oh, okay, maybe every couple days I'll have a scoop of ice cream. Maybe every couple days I'll have a couple cookies after dinner. And it's just like, it's enough to satisfy that sweet tooth, for the week. And I think that's probably what the idea is with Buxton. It's just like, look, if you want to eat cookies every day, then all right, you gotta be able to accept the consequences. But if you just, nibble every few days, I think you'll still get your fix. And I think that's kind of what I think fans have to look at right now. They still get their Buxton fix, but it's just not going to be every day, because if it is every day, then there are long-term consequences that go with that.
Yeah, moderation for sure is key there with Buxton. Another late one tonight, run it back, copy paste, 8:40 p.m. Central Standard Time. Dylan Bundy on the mound tonight for Twins in Game 2 versus the A's. Fans hoping for the return of Carlos Correa any day now. Rest assured, Reggie and I will be here to break it all down. Coming up, Patrick Beverley made the headlines yesterday after some Chris Paul trash talk.
Lord have mercy.
And I'm putting Reggie on the hot seat later on too. But first, do you want instant post-game reaction from insiders that cover your favorite teams? Check out our Locked On Sports Minnesota podcasts on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Follow every Twins, Vikings, Wild, or Wolves. Our Locked On team hosts are broadcasting live with team insiders like Kevin Gorg for the Wild and Brandon Warren for the Twins. Never miss a podcast by subscribing to Locked On Sports Minnesota YouTube channel. All right, well, Reggie, Patrick Beverley woke up and decided to take a ride on the media carousel yesterday. He made a pit stop on like half the morning shows at ESPN Studios, and he had plenty to say about Phoenix Suns Chris Paul. I mean, man went off. I had to double check and make sure I wasn't watching a Comedy Central roast, because Beverley was not too kind after the Suns blowout loss to the Mavs, stating, quote, "They benched the wrong person. They should have benched Chris in favor of DeAndre Ayton, who was the number 1 overall pick just a few years ago." Beverley also said Paul can't play defense anymore and compared him to a cone, stating, "CP can't guard nobody, man. Everybody in the NBA knows that. He's a cone. Give him the Ben Simmons slander." So, Reggie, let's start there. As you like to say, Pat Bev woke up and he chose violence yesterday, going off on Chris Paul. Why such harsh words for a guy who's a 12-time All-Star, a guy who led the NBA in steals a record 6 times, NBA assists a record 5 times. He was the Rookie of the Year, 2-time Olympic gold medal winner, and about that defense, a 9-time NBA all-defensive teamer. Was all that slander warranted, do you think?
I mean, look, Chris Paul isn't necessarily the most well-liked guy around the NBA. I mean, he was the NBPA president for years. He advocated for players and all that. But when you look at Chris Paul and you look at his body of work, he is a pest out there on the court. Players like young players, old players, like anybody can get it when it comes to Chris Paul. And I've seen some young players chirping at him. I've seen some older players chirping at him. And, like, he mixes it up with the best of them, Like, he's one of those hyper-competitive players that does any and everything to gain an advantage over his opponent. And that rubs a lot of people the wrong way. And it has rubbed Pat Bev the wrong way. If you go back and remember, Pat Bev got suspended for the first game of this season because of his antics with who? Chris Paul.
That's right.
The two of them do not like each other. Like, there is no love lost between the two of them. And so, like, Pat Bev, like, used that opportunity yesterday to get his issue off. Like, he got beef. He wanted all the smoke. And that's what he gave him. And I think it was interesting seeing the commentary behind it, because there were a faction of players and a faction of people who were just like, hey, he's got a point, you know? And it's just funny because one of my frat brothers brought up how, like, when Pat Bev was criticizing Ja Morant a few weeks ago, like, people loved Ja. So they came in and they packed him up. They packed Pat Bev up like, you know, Samsonite, zipped it up, got him up out the paint. Like, they got him out of there. But now, you know, with the Chris Paul slander from Pat Bev, guys are just like, well, he might have a point. And, you know, Pat Bev obviously was talking from a place of having talked to some of his peers, some of his colleagues, and really kind of forming that opinion. Now, there were other people, you know, like Damian Lillard, and people like that who were on Twitter yesterday who were voicing their opinion against what Pat Bev was saying. Like, I think Dame was like, man, Pat is talking like his word is law. He was just like, you know, he ain't him. Like, he can't do what Chris Paul can do. And it's just like, well, okay, you know, I get it. But, you know, it made for quite the entertainment, and I was here for all of it.
Yeah, Matt Barnes came to his defense today, laying out all the accolades I just mentioned, and came to bat for Paul and stating Pat Bev isn't anywhere near the level Paul is in their careers. When this is all said and done and the dust settles, like, will Pat Bev be looked at in a different light? Because we all know he loves to talk some trash, and that's why we love him. But will his name always be associated now with going on national television, slandering Paul like the way he did? Or as time goes on, will this kind of get lost in the wind over a long offseason? Like, those were some bold statements. Will this be attached to Pat Bev wherever he goes now, or just more bulletin board material in his laundry list of playful trash talk that he's always going to be known for?
Yeah, I think it just kind of is what it is. You know, the interesting thing is, like, you know, Matt Barnes' point was pointed, and he kind of insulted him a little bit. But I think the issue is, like, it rings true what Matt was saying as far as, like, he and Pat Bev are guys that are role players. You know, don't play Pat Bev like he can't play, though, because, like, he's lasted a decade in this league. Like, he can play. He can hoop at an NBA level. But, like, you're not looking at Pat Bev and asking him to get you 22 points, 10 assists, 5 rebounds. Like, you're not, like, that's not the guy that you're looking at. Like, you know, people call Chris Paul the point guard. And it's like, even if they don't like him per se, like, you have to respect the man because, like, you listed all of Chris Paul's achievements, and, like, he's a dude. He is one of the best NBA players of all time. And he's carried a reputation of not being a guy that could get it done in the postseason. And that part sucks, you know, but give the man his respect, but also, you know, like, give Pat Bev his respect. You know, he's maybe not the defensive stalwart as he was before. You know, he's very, you know, handsy. He gets in there and he's a pest as well. He tries to get under your skin, and I think a lot of guys just kind of haven't figured out, like, when the Lakers were in town a few months ago, and Pat Bev was, like, chirping at LeBron. LeBron was just like, whatever, it's Pat Bev, you know, it's fine, whatever. It's like nothing. If Pat Bev is doing something or saying something to get under your skin, that's on you, because you know what his MO is, you know what his game is, and it's just like so many players seem to have figured that part out, and it's like, man, nobody's tripping off Pat Bev. But it's just like, look, you got to respect the dude because he's been a player in this league as well. So I don't think it really does anything for him from a reputation standpoint. Pat Bev is one of those players that he's almost like a pariah. You know, it's like he's a great guy if he plays on the team that you root for, you love him. But if you play against him, you hate him. Like, there is no, like, in between. Like, I've never heard anybody say, oh, you know, Pat Bev's cool, you know, whatever. No, it's either like you hate him or you don't. It's like Draymond Green. Like, people either love him or they don't. And, you know, similar to a Draymond Green, they play a role and they play their role well. And that just is what it is.
Analytics, it just dominates everything in sports nowadays. It's an analytic-driven market, and there's still a lot of emotional and human aspects to the game that you just can't find in analytics. Pat Bev is a great case in point in that he just gets under your skin, causes somewhat of an emotional stir up, and you love when he's on your team, but man, you just can't stand going up against him. You got to respect that. All right, the time has come. My favorite segment is here. I'm putting Reggie on the hot seat, covering all the latest hot topics in Minnesota sports, called What Does It Mean? Reggie, are you ready to go through the gauntlet?
Come on. Come at me, bro.
I'm bringing it today. Here we go. First up, what does it mean? ESPN's newest power rankings names off one player from each team who benefited the most from each draft class. So Kevin Seifert noted for the Vikings, C.J. Ham was the player who most benefited from the front office haul after the team did not address the tight end position until the 7th round. And the fact that Kevin O'Connell could use a lot of two-back sets and motion Ham as a tight end early and often. What does it mean for Ham when trying to glean how the new-look Vikings offense could use their fullback and tight ends in 2022?
You know what's interesting is, like, Kevin Seifert dug deep into the bag for this one.
Yeah, he did. Yeah,
like,
I did not expect this one when I read that.
No, like
what?
Out of all people, the player who benefited from the draft the most, you went C.J. Ham?
The fullback?
You're like, but then you kind of think about it and you're just like, okay, Kevin might be on to something. He might be going somewhere with this because C.J. Ham has quietly become like one of the Vikings' most productive players since he was drafted in 2016, or went undrafted in 2016. And so I think what's really cool is like whenever you get CJ involved into the offense at any point, he produces. And so I think what Kevin O'Connell saw on film is a guy who can be used maybe more than he was. Like, he's just not a fullback. Like, I've seen them flex him out. I've seen them, put him on wheel routes out of the backfield and he pick up a first down for the team. Like, when you actually give him a chance, like, he can do some things. Now, look, he's 5'10", so, like, I don't see, like, him being a quote-unquote tight end in the, a sense of maybe like a Jim Kleinsasser or, something like that. But, like,
great name drop, by the way. Thank you.
Well, but I think he can be productive, if you are gonna implement a two-back set, receiver set, something like that. Just another weapon at Kevin O'Connell's like arsenal to be able to put out there. I think Kevin might be onto something, and I think CJ could be a weapon because he's shown that if given the opportunity, he can produce out there. And so that's not necessarily the first name you think of like, oh, who benefited from the draft the most, but like the dude can play. I mean, he wouldn't have lasted this long if he couldn't. Quietly still only 28 years old as well. Like, he's still got some good football left to be played moving forward. And I'm interested now that Seifert brings it up. I'm interested to see how Kevin O'Connell employs him game after game to kind of be a little bit more a part of the game plan as opposed to just being a lead blocker for Dalvin and Madison.
Well, when Kevin O'Connell was brought in, the first thing Vikings fans did, they pulled out the roster, they took a pen, and they go, okay, who's out? Fullback. Kevin O'Connell don't use fullback, not in that Rams offense. But you know what good coaches do in today's NFL? They maximize their players' best skill sets. And he knows, like you said, C.J. Ham's a great football player. He's one of the top 3 to 5 fullbacks in the league for a reason, albeit the league doesn't use the fullback position traditionally that much anymore, but the dude is useful and versatile nonetheless. And I love to hear that Seifert kind of pointed and highlighted CJ Ham out because, again, he's good enough to where you can find different ways to utilize him and diminish the lack of depth we talked about yesterday at the tight end position by motioning him and getting creative. You want to get your best 11 guys on the field, period. When you can show and disguise different looks using a fullback, Dalvin Cook's in the backfield. We talked about Alexander Madison as well. They're still going to try to run the ball quite a bit in this offense, no doubt.
Yeah.
But using CJ Ham, again, just shows and proves that Kevin O'Connell isn't just coming in, implementing and supplanting his system and making guys adjust to him. No, he's looking at the roster and the talent and adjusting to his players' skill sets. That's
great.
what I love about this. So hopefully Kevin Seifert's onto something. I know Vikings fans would love to see CJ Ham not just make the team, but be a part of this offense and produce like we've seen him the last 4 or 5 years. The local legend, Augustin, in the backyard.
He's a fan favorite. Yeah.
Next one up, what does it mean? Minnesota Vikings announced they have hired Demetrius Washington as VP of Football Operations. He comes from Cleveland. What does it mean when looking at the Vikings' heavy analytics-driven front office and how it now relates to player personnel? What's your just quick thoughts on bringing him in?
I think it's interesting that Kwesi brought in one of his guys, basically. Yep. You know, they were kind of in the trenches together in San Francisco when Kwesi first kind of made his transition into football. And, you know, he brought a guy in that he trusts. And he brought a guy in that, you know, probably has a similar mindset, thinks similarly to him. And so I think they're going all in on analytics, man. Like they're gonna really just like zero in on this. And I think it's really cool for the organization from a front office standpoint is you got another mind in there that, you know, is diverse in thought and someone who can really just kind of help, you know, as Kwesi continues to transition as a guy being in the general manager role and he makes these important decisions about the roster and about the overall growth of the football team. He's got another voice in the building that he trusts. You know, it's interesting, you know, like when I came to Care 11, I came as the sports director, you know, a leadership position. And when I came in, there were nobody, you know, on the team that I knew before I got here. And, you know, not to say that you can't work well with your team, but it's always kind of cool, you know, when you come to a situation and you're like, oh, okay, like I'll work with the team that's assembled, you know, and I think we work well together, which is the case with me at Care 11. But say like I was able to come over and like bring my own producer or bring my own, you know, whoever to come with me, someone that I was comfortable with, someone that I already had a relationship with, someone that I trust. And it just makes that experience that much more better. And so now what we're seeing is that Kwesi has done that. Like he is already getting along great with the people in the building and they are gelling well. But now he's brought a guy in that he knows, that he trusts, that, you know, he has a great relationship with, that can also kind of be a little bit of a wingman for him, that just kind of makes it all that much more, you know, like together when it comes to making football decisions. And so it's interesting that they did this after the draft. But I mean, anytime you kind of come in after a season, after, you know, a Super Bowl and all that stuff, and you're trying to just piecemeal your way, like this is kind of the result of that. And so you probably see, you know, when we get to around this time next year, that team is really just kind of gelling and moving forward in the direction that Kwesi really wants to go. But right now they're just kind of like getting things together and, you know, kind of filling things out.
As Brad Pitt in Moneyball says, adapt or die. And we know the entire sports landscape has now built their teams and philosophies around analytics. There's no point in dipping your toes in, Kwesi. If you're going to go all in, jump in the deep end, and that's what he's done. He's committed to this analytics landscape and bringing in Demetrius Washington from Cleveland. Love that they have some ties together, like you mentioned. So I think it's a good move for sure. Last one up, what does it mean? The Green Bay Packers made Jair Alexander the highest paid cornerback in the NFL yesterday with a 4-year, $84 million deal, including a $30 million guaranteed signing bonus, a new defensive back record. What does it mean when breaking down the thought process of the Packers to pay Jair Alexander over Davante Adams, who was traded this offseason? What's your quick takeaways from that move?
All right, did you watch that playoff game that they lost to the 49ers? So that's probably what is driving all of this. Like the offense, even with Davante and all those weapons, they hardly did anything in that game.
Nothing.
But what you saw was some terrible mistakes on the special teams. You saw, some mistakes on defense that really allowed the 49ers to take control and to win that football game. And I think if you're talking about trying to get back to the Super Bowl and talking about really just trying to last and not go one and done in the playoffs after being one of the top seeds, which is, embarrassing, I think they go all in on defense. I think what they hope is that Aaron Rodgers and that offense and Matt LaFleur, they'll figure it out and they'll be complementary to the defense. But what we saw in the draft is their first couple picks, defense. They were able to add Christian Watson, to kind of be a weapon for Aaron Rodgers, and Rodgers is going to have to bring him along as a rookie, because Rodgers doesn't have all that much time left. And it's like, well, you had an established guy in Davante Adams, and now you got to learn this rookie up to speed. And now, that's going to be an interesting thing when you talk about how this offseason progresses. But I think, the old adage still reigns true, man. Defense wins championships. And I think, them paying Jair, first of all, paying Jair was a no-brainer. He had some injuries, and so you hope that he continues to just stay healthy moving forward. But you're talking about one of the top corners in the game. So it's kind of like a no-brainer to pay that guy, right? You spent a first-round pick on him back, a few years ago. So it's just like you're investing in one of your guys. So it makes sense. But at the end of the day, like I said, defense wins championships. And so as brilliant as that offense was last year, bounced. They got packed up and they went home. Jimmy Garoppolo saying, F the Packers at the end of that game. Like, embarrassing. Like, dang, the disrespect. They're hoping that something like that doesn't happen again when you go all in on defense your first two picks and you pay Jair Alexander. Like, you're going hard on the defense, and you're gonna go by that to try to get you to the promised land.
This ain't the MLB, man. You can't keep everybody. There's a salary cap for a reason, right? And so you got to pick and choose. You got to get creative. And they chose defense over Davante Adams. And I think the philosophy kind of rings true here after they draft not one but two defensive players, Quay Walker, the linebacker from Georgia, the defensive tackle from Georgia, Devontae Wyatt in the first round, say, hey, we got Aaron Rodgers. But that doesn't mean we need to go get him help because we have Aaron Rodgers. He's going to make everybody around him better. He's going to elevate their game plan. It's like when Mike Zimmer was here in Minnesota and he kept using early picks on defense and cornerbacks specifically. And it's like, wait a minute. I thought you were the DB guru. I thought you were the cornerback guru. Why can't we wait later on and draft cornerbacks later and let you do your thing and help out the other side of the ball, the offensive side of the ball with those early round picks? So definitely a philosophy in place in Green Bay. Interesting to see how it's going to all play out. Jair, though, finally gets paid. Well-deserved. He's making more than Jalen Ramsey and Denzel Ward, the previous top two cornerbacks in the NFL. All right, Reggie, you survived the gauntlet. We're back here tomorrow breaking down the Twins game 2 tonight. Dylan Bundy on the mound. That game starts at 8:40 p.m. Remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel and join us every day for another episode covering all the biggest topics in Minnesota sports. He's Reggie Wilson. Follow him on Twitter at Reggie Wilson TV and on KARE11. I'm Luke Inman on Twitter at Luke_Spinman. Tune in tomorrow to Superior Sports Talk, part of Locked On Sports Minnesota. For Reggie, I'm Luke. Until tomorrow. signing out.
Be blessed. Spread love today.
This is Superior Sports Talk with Reggie Wilson and Luke Inman, part of Locked On Sports Minnesota.